3D Barn Owl Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish. Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to be showing you this really kind of elegant and simple and just very neutral tones, but it's a barn owl. I love owls. Owls are one of my favorite flighted animals. I say that, but there's so many animals that I love, but I do really love owls. When I always think that I want to get a little pygmy owl, it's probably not gonna happen, but I think that would be amazing. But this one's gonna be a barn owl, and I know that whenever I go out to, my uncle lives on a farm, and whenever I go out there, and you can always hear barn owls out hooing in the distance, and I just love it. I just love it. So I hope you guys like this little owl as much as I do, and please click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. So to begin with, I'm just going to start with sort of a slightly mottled background. So I'm going to be using a couple different shades of green, and they're actually very, very similar. One is just ever so slightly lighter. So I'm just going to be taking these two shades of green, or maybe it's just a little bit yellower. I don't know, they're not quite the same, but I just wanted the background to not be one solid color all the way down. Even though you don't see very much of it, I still wanted to kind of variegate slightly. So every time I grabbed a bead, I just took and dipped it in one color and then the other color, and then applied that to the nail. And because they're so similar, sometimes I would grab a little bit more of one than the other, just so that, I don't know, I didn't want it, you know when you look at like a bad photograph and there's that background that's just kind of like splotchy? That's what I was going for. So I wanted them to be very similar. So these colors in the video, they almost look identical. They're not. There is difference between them, but I didn't want it to be too dramatic either. So just a little bit like it's softly focused, like it's a tree in the background that just is out of focus. So then after that green is on there, and it could just be one color if you got just the one color, I'm going to be encasing the nail with a layer of clear acrylic. Since this is a relatively long nail, I am definitely going to make sure that I have a strong apex. Even though that 3D art is going to add some strength, I want it to stay, you know, I don't want it to break. So I want to make sure that I got a nice good nail structure underneath all of that. So just add that layer of clear, make sure everything is strong and in the proper shape. After I've got that down, I'm going to be filing it, and I started out with a 180 grit file. And if you're curious, if you follow along and watch my videos, and you probably have noticed I've been using an e-file a lot lately, it was dead, so I needed to be charged, and I just decided I would hand file it. I didn't feel like getting up, so that's why I'm doing a hand file instead of using my e-file for a couple videos here. But for this one, just starting out with that 180 grit, which is my favorite to start with, and then going on to a 240 grit. If you are just learning to do acrylic stuff and you have a couple more mistakes or a little bit more to file through, you might want to go down to a 100 or a 150 just to make it a little bit quicker. And so then after it's buffed as well, I'm going to start working on my actual little owl. So I'm going to begin with just a layer of white, kind of like a base shape underneath his entire self. So I just started out and I kind of formed his head, and then I'm going to be working my way down his body. So I'm just going to add little bit by little bit and kind of sketch it out. If you try to do all of it in the one bead or try to do all of it too quickly, chances of having little mishaps are a lot higher, but if you do it little tiny bit by little tiny bit, it's gonna probably go a lot smoother for you. So I start out with just sort of a oval for his head that's not as tall as it is wide. And then just continue that shape going down. You want to add ever so slight indents where his neck is, but for the most part, it's a relatively smooth shape. And then on his tummy, which is the area that I'm working on right now, I'm just going to be adding a couple little bits of acrylic that are sticking out because he's got a couple feathers that aren't tucked in with the rest of them. They're a little ruffled. And then I'm going to be filling in just that very little tip with some brown acrylic, just because he's standing on a log or a post or something like that. And then I'm going to be adding his one leg that is sticking out that you can see. His other leg is hidden behind him because he's kind of turned to the side and his head is turned back and looking at you. And after I've got his leg, I'm going to be adding his toes. And everything that I'm doing here is with white. I'm going to be adding all of the color in just a moment, but they have kind of a shimmery appearance, at least I think. I think a lot of feathers kind of look shimmery. So starting out with that white and then adding these metallic colors that I'm going to be using is going to kind of give that feather light play sort of look. So like I said, I'm using metallic colors for all of his coloring, and I'm going to begin with a bronze color and just sort of go around the shape of his face, mainly focusing on the outside shape of this and not really worrying about what the inside looks like at all. That is basically irrelevant at this point, just making sure that you have that really soft heart-shaped face. And once you have that, like I do, then you're going to go through and take some more of the white acrylic and fill it in. You want to leave just the tiniest bit of that bronze outline on there. So as you can see, I pretty much covered up 95% of it, just leaving that tiny little bit of an outline. While that white acrylic is just beginning to set, take the tip of your brush and sort of jab it in and create the bridge of his nose. So you want to have that nice curved shape coming down until it gets to where his beak was, which I will add his beak a little later on. So now I'm going to be adding all the color to his back area. So I used silver, gold, and bronze acrylic, and I did that for just kind of mixed him up for his back. I was looking at this picture of a barn owl, and the colors just faded from one to the other, from kind of like grays to creams, and so just using these 3 colors and kind of mixing them all up together really gave that soft, shimmery fade look, I thought, which really looked good for a little barn owl. I'm going to be using some more of that bronze color on his toes, and then use silver for his nails, and really defining the feet is going to come with the acrylic paint a little later on. So at this point you're just getting a little bit of that color on there, just making sure. And those silver toenails, I like little silver toenails. So now I'm going to be adding a little bit more of the white acrylic down the bridge of his nose, or I guess it's not really the bridge of his nose since he's got a beak, but down the center of his face. And then I'm going to be adding his beak with silver, and then just adding a touch of gold in around where his eye sockets are, just to add a little shadow on there. It's very subtle, it's not too much. And then I'm going to take a bead of black acrylic, I'm going to be placing down his eyes. Now the top line of his eyes should go really easily because you have that indent from where you made it in the white acrylic way back when you first added the layer on his face. So that top line should just kind of make itself, but you want to make sure that you keep them symmetrical otherwise from side to side. And now I'm going to go through and add my hand painting. So I'm going to be defining some of the feathers on his back. So I'm going to be doing this with some brown paint, just adding them very quickly. You know, I'm just kind of sketching them in, hinting at them more than actually painting them all. Adding a couple lines with brown on his face, just add some more shadowing. Even though they do have that white face, there is still shadows and highlights on it. And then with some gray, I'm also going to be doing a couple little shadows around the eyes some. And also I'm just going to be taking some of that and going down his body just a touch and adding little shadows here and there where I think there needs to be some. And I added a little bit more black, just a touch, just to make the gray a little darker. Adding some more details on his leg and his foot, as well as on his wings. Adding some little white highlights on his eyes, make sure they look really shiny. And then with that white, I'm going to be going through and highlighting the white on his face. Like I said, even though he is or has just a white face, you want to add levels to it so it's not so flat looking. Make sure everything is really, really dimensional and easy to see. Carry on some of that white highlighting around the side of his head, and then just a touch on his wings. And when I did it on his wings, I diluted my white paint so that it wasn't quite so intense. Make it a little softer, as well as on his leg and his feet. You know, just a little soft highlights. And then with some black, I'm going to go through and do a couple little defining lines. And whenever I do defining lines with black, I like to dilute it slightly, just because you can get thinner lines that way, and it's a lot easier to control because the paint isn't so thick and it goes on your brush a lot easier. Just a couple things, also outlining his head, just a touch, in his beak, making sure that that is very easy to see. And then I'm going to be applying a layer of gel sealer over the background, so over that green and over the top of his little perch that he's standing on, which is, I don't know, it's like a stump, I guess. So just make sure that that's all nice and shiny. After that's cured, I'm going to be applying a layer of matte top coat over the top of my owl. Like I said, I absolutely adore this guy, and especially with those metallic colors and the matte top coat. It's not so metallic like you think it's chrome. It's just kind of shimmery and subtle, and does give you that feathery appearance. I don't know, I always think feathers are shimmery, like I said. So I hope you like this as much as I do. Please share any recreations with me on Facebook and Instagram. I really would love to see them, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!